It's an environment where everyone's working in the same office. It's a small company. There's a lot of communication between people going on. You generally have your executive or the people that are the founders of the company and things like this are very accessible. They're talking with the development teams. These guys with this vision and goals are very connected to the company because the company is small. And it's very easy to communicate these visions and these goals and directions down because we're small. You know, you may have lunch with the founder every Friday or something like that, the developers and the guy that started the company. And this is, you know, when we move fast, and this is the kind of thing that we want to capture and reuse. But as we start to scale, this sort of thing becomes impossible. Like when we go from 2 scrums to 20 to 40 to 100 scrum teams, the CEO can't have lunch with 100 scrum teams. It's just like there's no restaurant that big in Bangkok. So we start to have problems with scaling this. And so the biggest problem we have is this communication of vision and goals and direction becomes hard from the people at the top, the C-levels, things like that. And this is when, you know, we start to come up with different solutions, like how do we scale this? How do we make sure that the Scrum teams are working on the right thing, that everyone's direction is aligned, and as a company, we're heading in the right direction. So what generally happens is when we get into this scenario, we start to scale. We've got 20 Scrum teams now. What do? Well, we implement a layer of project management because, you know, that's what we do. That's what project management's for. Of course, everyone does project management. It's obvious. And this implements a layer of management that I believe is totally unnecessary. And it generally leads to some bad things or some bad practice that I want to talk about today and that I've seen in the past. So I'll first start with how we scale badly and some of the problems that I've seen in some teams over the years in some companies. So the question I always ask people is what are you measuring? And when I ask developers this, you know, they'll generally say stuff like, oh, you know, we measure, did we achieve our sprint goal? We measure how many subtasks we completed. We measure sprint completion, story points. Are we increasing our efficiency? And these sort of things, like I think as a Scrum team, if you want to evolve, they're important things to look at. But if this is how you're measuring your success, then what you're measuring is work output. You're not measuring business value. And this is some of the mistakes that I see some teams falling into, and very successful teams that I've worked with don't measure themselves like this. And this leans into, you know, it kind of sounds like project management. So what is project management? This is a definition of Wikipedia. It was the best one I could find. It's the practice of initiating, planning, executing, and controlling the closing of the work of a team. It's about work and executing. It's about completing and delivering work, not business value. And this is the mistake that I see some teams fall into. So I would question, like, what are you measuring? Who here measures themselves with story points? No? Subtasks? Yeah? Okay. Is this, everyone should know this, we all use Jira, yeah? That's how we know we're agile, because we're using Jira. Okay, so is this success? This is a fantastic burn down chart. We can see we've finished all of our tasks by the end of the sprint. And we've got a great burn up that goes along with it as well. So if we do this, then we've won, yeah? So again, I ask, what are we measuring? Do delivering features mean success for you? after you've delivered this feature or this new page in the web application or this new button in our app, does that mean we're successful as a development team? And so if your answer to these questions is yes, you may be working in a feature factory. So when should your story end is another question. So a lot of people, when their stories end is when we ship. We talk about this concept of done, our definition of done. And a definition of done for a lot of teams is about when they ship, which is a good thing. And I think traditionally with the rise of the DevOps culture, shipping has become part of our definition of done, which I think is a great thing. Because 5 years ago, if you asked people what their definition of done was, it would have been, yes, I've checked in the code, I'm done. But now we've come through this evolution of, of this rise of DevOps culture. People are owning things more end to end. Developers are involved in infrastructure more, in deployments. And so a lot of our teams now say, well, we've shipped it, so it's done. But I would question this. And I would say that your story should end when they deliver business value, whether that be value positive or negative. But some people and some of my developers in the past have argued as well, well, I've got a product owner, he's responsible for business value, not me. I'm a part of the development team. I write software. This kind of division of ownership I've found to be very ineffective over the years. One of the things that I think Scrum implies wrongly is that it refers to the development team separate to the product owner. If you read through a lot of Scrum documentations, which implies that the product owner is not a member of the team. The product owner is a member of the team, I've found in very effective teams. Teams that treat the product owner as another part of the team. The development team is responsible for the technical half, but that doesn't mean that they're a team outside of the PO. So I've found it very effective when teams work with their product owner as a part of the team, from within the team. One of the things that I've found with teams that only focus on execution and aren't measuring their success properly is that they're not very effective. And seeing the opportunity is something that the product owner's speciality. It doesn't necessarily mean it's his sole responsibility. So there's no reason the developers can't help out with this. And that they have the ability to really have some input. So one of the things that the Agile Manifesto says is working software is the primary measure of success. I would challenge what our definition of working software should be. If working software for you is just software that doesn't have bugs, then I think that's an ineffective definition of working software. Working software to me and my teams means that it's something that delivers value. It's something that does what we intended to do, or it's something that teaches us something. It's not just something that's running in production. So I want to talk a little bit about what I call scaling rights, or similar to how we do things at Agoda. So one of the things that I've found to be very effective over the years is what I call you build it, you run it. So talking about post-deployment. So we have our DevOps culture. We follow things through to production. But after production, what do you do with your software? Are you hands off? That's the other team's problem. No, what we do is the developers understand their application. As well as deploying it, they monitor the performance. They monitor the user segments, the user behavior. They look at how it's behaving, and they learn from this and react to it. This is a part of our measuring what I consider working software. And it's understanding your product, understanding how the users use it, understanding when it fails, what it'll do. And also, we're very big on A/B testing. If you don't do A/B testing, especially if you work in something like e-commerce or SaaS, please check it out. It's amazing. The Firebase, if you use that, Google's cloud product, it has some A/B testing stuff built in. I definitely recommend checking it out. But this is a part of the cultural change that we go through. It's not just owning your software isn't just about deploying it. It's about knowing it, understanding it, and learning from it. And the other way that we scale right is being bottom up. So your developers are generally highly educated people, and they're smart people too. So bringing them in and having them being a part of the problem and not just doing what stories the POs give them, and understanding why they're doing things can help them be a part of the solution. Letting them measure the problem. The developers are usually, the ones that are closest to the software. It's easy for them to implement measurements. If you're working with Azure, you have things like application insights that you can work with, which is a great platform for getting metrics out of your software and analyzing the user behavior, how people use it, and expanding the knowledge. And this is a great thing to get developers involved in. With application insights, it's even connected to the IDE. You can analyze your application while you're writing code. If you're using AWS, there's CloudWatch. There's plenty of solutions out there that you can easily take advantage of to get your developers engaged with the software, how people use it. And again, it goes beyond just deploying your software and owning it once it's out there. And the biggest thing is trusting. So the trusting your developers that they will make the right decisions. These guys up here on the bottom, they're all my direct reports. I trust them entirely. I'm not at work today, and I'm confident they won't blow up production. So the other way that we do things is with KPIs. When I mention KPIs, a lot of people immediately think, well, that's corporate mumbo jumbo. That's just measuring things and generating Excel spreadsheets, and why are we doing that? We've found KPIs to be a very effective way to manage Scrum teams. So the reason, but only if they're done good. So good KPIs don't tell you what to do. Very effective KPIs give you the freedom to do anything you need to do to move them. And this is one of the ways that we manage things at Agoda, is that we're very hands-off in our management style. My teams don't have a project manager that comes to them and says, you will do stories A, B, and C this sprint, and the developers go off and do them. We have product owners that work inside the team that come up with hypotheses to change the software, and these things get implemented and they contribute to a number that we chase. But it's up to the development teams to have the freedom to do anything they need to chase this number. And this sort of management becomes very effective, and it's a very bottom-up style to do this type of thing. So an example of a good KPI, I want to delve into this because sometimes when I mention this acronym, people's minds just blow away. For a Scrum team is something like funnel conversion. So who here works in e-commerce? Not many? Wow, really? I would have thought there'd be more. Okay, so most of you probably won't be aware of what a conversion funnel is. A conversion funnel is just looking at, like on Amazon, how many users get from the search page to looking at the product, and then through to the booking form, and then finally book, and looking at the traffic patterns going through. This is an excellent KPI that you can give to a Scrum team, because it's directly connected to business value. You can give a team this, you can go away and play golf for a couple of weeks and come back, and the Scrum team can go, look at what we've done. And this is very effective to manage teams. Bad KPIs are things like, in our test environment, we're measuring the number of failed Selenium tests or something like this. This is a very directional number. It tells you exactly what you have to do, and you go off and do it. The reason this is bad is because it's really not connected to business value, and it doesn't give people the freedom that they need to deliver business value. So I'll talk a little bit about how we do it at Agoda. So this is secret stuff. No, I'm just joking. So at Agoda, we have a very data-driven culture. Like I was saying before, we A/B test everything. We're a part of the Booking Holdings group, and Booking.com was one of the pioneers of A/B testing in e-commerce about 15 years ago, and it's very strong in our culture in the group. If you don't know what A/B testing is, please check out Firebase. I definitely, it's one of the products that's out there. There's heaps of other ones as well. We don't use the Google products. I'm not selling them, and I'm not on commission either. We experiment, we learn from failures and success. And the other thing is data trumps opinion. One of the things that's very different on development teams that I run these days from many years ago is the developers are always engaged with the data. So I've got developers that are querying Hadoop and SQL and coming up with interesting bits of data and segments and coming back and going, hey, how about we try this? Or I've got this hypothesis that changing this will have a good effect on the users and the product. And this is the kind of measurement of success that really drives effective teams, is measuring things by not just the feature that you deploy, but how well that performs. And then looking at its performance and learning from that. We've released this new feature. How did the users react to it? Is that a prior for another experiment that we can do to improve the product as well? So it's the way I like to phrase it is that data trumps opinion. You can have an opinion about what a change to a software will do, what will benefit a user, but if you actually look at the data and dig into the data, you can tell and come up with more accurate hypotheses than what your opinion will tell you. So A/B testing. So the Agoda.com website is a great example that I like to use. Right now there's 400 active experiments or A/B tests running on the Agoda.com website, which means with that amount of variance, if you open the website on 2 different laptops, there is a statistical impossibility that you will get the same looking website, just because the number of tests that we're running. And this is something, again, I can't say enough about how good this is to look into for a team and running a team. It really teaches the developers how their users are interacting with the software, whether the change is effective or not. And we learn from our failures as well as our successes. So, like I said, sometimes we'll deliver a feature and the business value we will get from that is negative. So we need to understand that. We need to understand when we've failed. And measuring the software, the user behavior, this allows us to be more effective. So I love this meme. I'm a big fan of The Matrix, but it's becoming less relevant. It's a movie from the 90s for all the young people that don't know. But what if I told you don't need a PMO? That's a project management office for those that hate project management like me. At Agoda, we have 800 engineers, 150 Scrum teams, but only 2 levels of management. And we only need 2 levels of management. Between we over here is one of my developers. Hi, we. Between her and our CTO, there is me, my boss, and then the CTO. We don't need more management than that, because we use these tools like bottom-up, allowing the teams to be self-driven, to measure themselves, to work with their POs against KPIs, to not need this complex layer of project management that some companies become addicted to. So yeah, you can do it too. So that's all I had to talk about. Is there any questions? Yeah.
Hi, Danish here. With these many teams, do you use any type of scaling framework like SAFe? And if so, because in SAFe you do require a PMO office to run the to run the management some sort of, or
Yeah.
release trains and all that.
The release trains and yeah. If you're a fan of SAFe, I recommend checking out, just search on YouTube. The Lego guys did an awesome video called "Is SAFe Evil?" And it's interesting. They've been using SAFe for a few years. We don't use any frameworks like that. Basically, what we do is teams or sometimes groups of teams are given KPIs, and they just work towards them. So yeah, it scales quite nicely. We don't need this any level of management or anything like that on top of them because they're very independent.
Secondly, you mentioned that product owners being, or at least being considered as part of the team,
Yeah.
The software development team. But then again, product owners are also part of their team, like the product owner's team. And sometimes there is a conflict of interest where their team suggests that a minimal viable feature would have a lot more gold plating than a development team would consider as a minimum viable feature.
Well, we solve that because the development team and the product owner have the same KPI. So the product organization doesn't have a separate KPI to the development team. Each product owner works with a team, they have the same KPI, they work in the same direction. There is a duality in Scrum, which I think is good, which is this a push from both sides. So there's a push from the product owner for delivering the product, but there's a push from the development team for a sound technical solution. And we still have that duality, but what we don't have is and what I found in some teams over the years is a product owner that walks into sprint planning and goes, "Here's the stories," and walks out. There's a discussion, a dialogue, and a conversation between the developers and the PO, and everyone is collaborative in working towards the same goal. My favorite guy from Audi over there. I love these guys.
Thanks for sharing that KPI done well. It can be very useful, and it's new to me seeing the funnel tied to the KPI. So it's directly linked to the business value. That's extremely useful to me. I would like to ask is there other example of this kind of KPI linking to business value? Because sometimes we build something because we want to learn. Sometimes we build something because of reputation. Sometimes we build internal products for our staff to make their life easier. And these kind of things are even harder to, I find it's even harder to track. And yeah, I used to believe that things that are really useful are really hard to measure. So do you have any other example that you can share?
That's an awesome question because we have that problem too. So the question is around like, I've got my KPI, maybe funnel conversion. And I know if I do this work, it will improve the funnel conversion, but I also know if I do this other work, it'll make it easier to do my work. So this is something that's a hard balance to reach sometimes because you've got to balance with, it can be hard to balance things like refactoring and work on your build system with the business KPIs. We've tried a few things to deal with this. One of the things that we tried which didn't work is we gave teams KPIs that were around improving technical quality and being like a DevOps team. Don't do a DevOps team. It doesn't work, trust me. But again, it's up to your context. Maybe it will work for you, but it failed horribly for us. It all comes down, I think, to the definition of done, and sometimes it's hard to balance too because then there's the little things that people want to get done that get left aside because they're not big, they can't have an impact. One of the methods that we use for dealing this with one of our teams is we have this thing that we call code day. So 1 day per sprint or 1 day per week, it depends on which team I'm talking about. We have the developers are allowed to work on whatever they want to try and improve, the systems they're working on. So they'll do things like refactoring, updates to the build system, things like that. It's one of the ways that we found was effective with dealing with this, but I still don't think we've found a good way to balance that, improvement of the product with the business value. So if you've got any advice on that, yeah. Cool. Any other question? Okay. Cool.
Okay. So no question now. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for coming to join us. This is Rachel from Thailand.
Oh, that shirt too.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Thank you.